Welcome to the Cybersecurity Vault. I'm your host, Matthew Rosenquist, CISO, Industry Cybersecurity Strategist and Advisor. And today, this podcast is part of a series where I get to pick the brains of cybersecurity leaders as to what 2025 will hold for our industry. And we're going to explore kind of in three different areas: how attackers are maneuvering, how business conditions are changing, and how technology innovation is impacting cybersecurity. And today I'm talking with Dan Lohrmann. Dan is a Field Chief Information Security Officer at Presidio, an author, international speaker, and longtime cybersecurity trailblazer in the industry. Welcome, Dan, and thank you for sharing your insights today.
Matthew, it's great to be with you. It's great to be on this podcast, but also to see you in person back in Montreal last year. It was great to spend some time together. So really excited about the conversation.
A lot of fun in Montreal. We got to meet and talk with a lot of great people there.
We did.
Okay, so every year, right, especially around this time, but it seems that cybersecurity becomes more challenging and the attackers are adapting. The business expectations are increasing faster than budgets, and the technology adoption, it creates all sorts of headaches, challenges, and opportunities. So let's start with the attackers. Right? How do you see cyber threats changing in 2025 from tactics or capabilities or maneuvers, or what do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna just start off by saying one thing, a little plug, but it's not just for me, but for Government Technology Magazine. Every year I do a report. I've been doing this for more than a decade now of not my predictions, but the top vendors all put out. We were just talking about this before the show. Free predictions. You can go out to Lohrmann on cybersecurity and you can see this report. It's called the Top 25 Security Predictions for 2025, Part 1 and Part 2. Matthew, you're in there in Part 2, and you've done this. You're great at it. But not just individual predictions, but also what the vendors are saying, and the reports have references and more detail. So what I'm going to say is definitely influenced by what I've been reading a lot over the holidays, and I do this every year for my own benefit, for my own career. I encourage your listeners to do that. Read the reports, the background, the references behind it, because it can really help you understand why people are saying these are, whether it's a prediction, a trend, a forecast. Different people use different words, but it's really the same thing. One thing, probably the one prediction that I like the most, I saw it in WatchGuards, I saw it in Trend Micro, I saw it in a number of them. They call it pig butchering. It's like, what's pig butchering? What does that have to do with cybersecurity, right? It comes from the concept of, and that's a scam, by the way, pig butchering scam. We're not talking about just fattening up a hog, but that is part of it. It's like the idea is it's a slow process. They kind of like they wait for the cow or the hog to get big and then they slaughter them, right? And I think a lot of the reports are talking about that. I like the concept of, I don't like the concept, but I think it is something that's happening a lot more. So the concept, the philosophy here, Matthew, is a slower, longer hack with big dollar figures. So we've seen fraud, CEO fraud. People call it, whaling, or the big fish, if you will, the big CEO fraud for a while, business email compromise for a while. Those have been trends from the FBI and others over the last few years. What they're saying now, and what a lot of the vendors are saying, and what I'm seeing as well, is you're hearing these stories of people. It can be days, weeks, months. Not necessarily just the quick, I clicked on something and ransomware hit. Of course, that's going to be happening as well. So I don't think ransomware is going away. I don't think those hacks are going away. But a slow, longer hack where the idea is, building a relationship with someone, using deep fakes, using all of these different techniques, and building that level of trust, and then going after a much bigger payday. So maybe a bigger, not just a one-off, I transfer you $100 or $1,000, but maybe I'm going for several $1 million, or, so it's a slower, longer relationship with the bad guys. Of course, you don't think it's a bad guy. Maybe you think you're in a romantic relationship with somebody who lives in Europe, or, it could be all kinds of different scenarios. We could walk through some of those, but pig butchering shows up in a lot of these reports. or the low slong hack, slow long hack, um, and really just trying to get people to build trust with the victim so that they're going to actually have a bigger payday.
Yeah, I mean that type of fraud, it's a long game and it tends to focus on a particular target and it's very personal, right? Because as you said, it's building that relationship and in many cases a romantic relationship or some type of mentorish kind of relationship where the victim wants to protect or help or because of this long established kind of tentacles over time. But it's, do you think in 2025 that type of attack is going to be scalable? I mean, it's very personal, right? And when someone gets victimized, it's very traumatic. It's not, an entire company, it's a person typically. Do you think that's going to scale out? Or
Well,
is it just
I
going to
do.
be big in headlines and who gets hit?
I think it's going to scale in this sense. I mean, there was a program, and now I'm going to forget who it was with. This actually isn't in any of the reports, but there's several programs you can go out there and look at romance scams over the last couple of years, and using AI, using a broad initial approach, actually using how they would scale would be the initial round of getting people into the net or whatever, and then they pass it off. And they actually, I think it was 60 Minutes actually, now that I think about it, where they actually did a whole segment where they tried to track these guys down in Nigeria and in Africa. And you may remember the one I'm talking about,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
and so how does that scale? Well, it scales because using AI, using automated means to get people kind of to step one, step two, kind of first inning, second inning, third inning. At the third inning, then you hand it off to another round of people that get it to the fifth, seventh inning, sixth inning, seventh inning, and then you have your closers that come in eighth and ninth inning, if you will, using a baseball analogy here, that are actually going to close the deal and get the millions of dollars. So I do think, yes. I mean, the simple question is, it might not scale like, in the sense of we think of, you know, millions of people being in the headlines, but I do think millions of this will impact millions of people using, and we've been talking about this for a couple years,
Hmm.
using deep fakes, using AI, using automated techniques to be able to reach a wider audience. And again, see who falls for that first level. We used to always talk about phishing and then spear phishing and then
Right.
whaling. And we've been talking about that for several years. I've written about that. I know you have, others have. This is like, it's linking them together, maybe a broad push, wide net, get you to the beginning, then get to the next level. And then you're going to read about the ones that are tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars that actually, I mean, these can be very sophisticated. Almost reminds me a little bit of it's going to show how old I am. The old movie, The Sting. These are like The Sting. And they're going to really, if you go way back and watch that movie, a
The
lot of money
original.
went into
Watch the original. Yes.
Anyway, that's the same kind of concept, but it's online.
Well, and what you're really talking about, and we're seeing this now, right, is that it's really a marketing and sales funnel. Just like you said, there are teams and experts and tools to get people into the funnel, right, to be able to trigger it. And then it goes into that next phase where they're, a whole different team who is an expert more in local language and romance and empathy, building that long-term relationship and almost like a CRM system. When did I
Yeah.
last contact this person? What was said? What's my next little, text I'm going to send or message I'm going to send? Great. Right. And then you get to the closers, right? Where you're going to, push the hammer down. You're going to get the money. You're going to have some type of fraud and transfer of assets. And that's where you close the deal. And if, we're starting to see that in 2025 makes total sense to me that that becomes more institutionalized because it makes money. It works, right? And if it works, that's what the cyber criminals are going to do, and that's where they're going to invest. Okay, so I love that idea for the attackers. So let's switch. And how is running cybersecurity, the business of cybersecurity, how is that going to change for cybersecurity professionals?
Yeah, I mean, I think AI. We see wide trends. I mean, every report you read, every prediction you read, any conference you go to, you almost can't get more than a paragraph in without saying either AI or Gen AI or automated tools. It is, there's no doubt it is the new pixie dust. And to some extent. It is everywhere. It's in everything, and all old products now have AI, with it. Vendors are all, in 23, 24, everyone's now getting to the point where they said that, we're an AI company, maybe creating a .ai version of the company or whatever it might be. But now they're starting to roll out products and or new products associated with that. I think there are varying levels of what's real and what's not, but I will tell you that with some of the top vendors, and I hate to start naming vendor names, but we can if you want to go there. But they really are. We've again talking about this for a while, but I think in 25 we're starting to really see a level of automation, a level of response with artificial intelligence, and tool sets that is something at a level we've never seen it before. And really, where your typical SOC analyst, security operations center analyst, cannot possibly keep up. So, the concept is not brand new. I think what we're seeing though is it's coming to in 25 a whole nother level of speed, accuracy, the ability to really be almost like that level one SOC analyst of old, and then pass more things to a SOC 2 analyst or really be able to again that funnel of what where are those threats, real time response to those threats. We're seeing if you want to take a big step back globally, just literally the headlines. The Trump administration is about ready to take office. I'm not sure exactly when this is going to be airing, but talking about billions and billions of dollars coming into the U.S. from all over the world around new data centers. I mean, to the hundreds of billions of dollars being invested over the next several years. Those data centers, it's more data than ever. It's more, and we've been talking about data analytics for years. We've been talking about more data collected than ever because Internet of Things is all around us. So you've got IoT, you've got the physical aspects of security, and then you've got cybersecurity, all of these threats coming together. And how do you parse them? And how do you know what you can actually work on as a security team? So that's where AI really comes in. And again, we could start talking about, what different products can do for different companies. But I think at a broad level, almost every one of the top vendors is giving you the ability to do that at a scale, breadth, and depth that we've never seen before. So whether they call it AI, I think the other big trend along with that, I'll just throw this out there because back to the individual, every report talks about agentic AI. We're all going to have agents in our lives. Agentic AI keeps showing up everywhere on a personal level and at an organizational level. What is agentic AI? For those who have never heard the term, go research it, go read it. There's articles on this. It shows up in every single one of these reports. You can read at least 90% of them. That an agent will be able to go out and do all these different things for me. From I could set it off and it could go find all the travel deals the Lohrmann family wants to go on. I give it some boundaries, and it goes and comes back and gives me all of this information about, okay, these meet the criteria, these follow these rules, and ultimately we kind of want the Jetsons robot to do all this for us. I don't think that's going to happen in 25. I don't think we're going to have a robot serving us, but that model, we're heading in that direction. And the agentic AI is we're all going to have agents that's going to be gathering more data than ever before on Daniel and Matthew, and we're going to have this data in all areas of our lives. A lot of it is going to be sensitive. It's going to be very personal. How much privacy do you want in your life? All of those questions. But my point is, all of that data is going to be there in those tools, individuals, organizations, meetings, all this data is there, and guess what? The bad actors are going after the same data. So the reality is you're going to have the ability to respond so much faster and so much broader and deeper if you're going to even keep up, because you can't do this manually anymore. You won't be able to keep up without these automated tools.
So I'm hearing two things. One, I'm hearing that security teams in 2025 are really going to lean into practical uses of AIs that vendors are now coming to fruition with and making available, but they're going to lean into AI just to meet with the scale. And they're going to need to, because on the other end of that, AI is generating and creating so much more data and sensitive information that's valuable that the company then has to protect. So the amount you need to protect goes up, and now you need scalability. And so, and you had mentioned SOC, right? Security Operations Center. Do you think that will be in 2025, right? I'm sure years past, it'll expand out, but do you think in 2025, that's where security will see the biggest impact for AI systems to help them on this journey?
I mean, yes, and I think not all SOCs are created equal. One small company, a lot of organizations outsource these functions, or the people use different words. And I was in government at a time, Matthew, where outsource was a bad word. We weren't outsourcing anything. We're partnering. We're not outsourcing. So you say outsourcing, you get fired. You can't say that word. No, don't say the O word, especially if it's offshore. If it's offshore outsourcing, now you're really out of a
Look
job.
for a new job. Yep.
That is hitting the tax coffers. So we don't do that. So you say, we have to have it onshore, and you have the different people are saying, okay, is this being done in India? Is it being done in Australia? Are we doing a follow the clock, follow the sun kind of approach to this? Or is it, kind of your traditional SOC that, it's six guys in the basement? We used to call it when we first created our first SOC in the state of Michigan, when I was CISO in Michigan, we called it the Bat Cave. It was the Bat Cave. And literally the Bat Cave was where, all the fun stuff was happening. And we put a big sign over the door and said, do not enter, and, warning, and that was about all we had. There was no security around it or anything, but we had a good sign. But, the reality is we've come a long way with SOCs. I mean, and so, a lot of organizations now partner for that, or use managed service providers for that. But I think that's where we are seeing the most innovation. And again, it's really challenging. I think at the end of the day, some of these threats are still the same threat. So ransomware is evolving. We're still seeing more and more, record levels of ransomware hitting hospitals and healthcare organizations in 24. Do I see that stopping? No. I mean, as we're getting better, unfortunately, the bad guys are getting better as well. So it's going to be a required step up your game, because the bad actors are stepping up their game. And if SOCs don't innovate, if they don't change, if they don't modernize, if they don't bring in these tool sets, they will not be able to keep up.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So the last kind of area is really around technology. And we've been talking from the onset here about artificial intelligence. Do you think 2025, that's really going to be all we're going to talk about from a technology perspective? Or do you think things like quantum, distributed computing, things like that, next generation cloud, from a technology perspective, what will be the big movers and shakers in 2025 for cybersecurity?
Yeah, I mean, I interesting, mentioned quantum. I'm going to give you a different answer. A few days ago, the CEO of NVIDIA just kind of, just came out with a press conference this week, and when we're taping this in the second week for first full week of January, and it just came out with a report saying that real quantum computers might be 15 to 20 years away. So, a bunch of startup quantum stocks just halved in value. Literally. I mean, that's not a joke. I mean, that is literally, go out and look, believe me, go out to CNBC or Bloomberg and you'll see what I'm talking about. So I do think that, we have a lot of different things on that traditional hype cycle, if you will, from Gartner or whatever vendor you like to use to look at that. I do think, I mentioned earlier agentic AI. I think that is a trend that keeps showing up. That it's an evolution of AI into more
Yeah.
practical areas of every area of life. And
Well,
so,
it's the
but
Jarvis in Iron Man, right? I mean, it's that being able to do analysis, being able to be extensible, grab and set off other things and pull it all together. That's the promise of that type of AI.
yeah,
Everybody wants that. I mean,
correct.
yeah.
Correct. And I think and being able to take some steps out of it, like, so I mean the idea, putting this very practical level, I it's funny because this, before I was on the show here, I just, a good friend Larry Whiteside, and everybody know, Larry is posted something about a vendor who posted on their website, a little side thing. It's like, this data was created with Chat GPT. We are basically a total disclaimer of the value. It's like, we have no responsibility. Please do not
Reader
use this.
beware.
Please do not use this to make any important decisions. Please do not rely on this as being
The
accurate.
full
Do not
liability
rely.
disclosure.
It was crazy. I mean, I'm reading this. I'm like, Larry, come on, what's going on here? But so I think the level of trust that people have in that's where the battle's going to be. Again, right before Trump's taking office here, CISA just came out with they're announcing that they're going to now have trust labels on IoT device, certifications of, is this product cyber safe? Is it
Right.
trustworthy, cyber trustworthy? And so, who are you going to listen to about data? Who are you going to listen to about, these AI agents? I mean, I will say, like, on a personal level, I would never use AI to write for me because I love to write and I want it to be unique for me. But I will use it to, like, I'll take a blog, I'll throw it in ChatGPT or Gemini or something and say, what's a good headline for this? And
Yes.
it gives me a great job of, like, giving me an SEO, search engine optimized title that
I
is
do
going
the
to
same thing, right? Give
it's
me
gonna
10
grab the right
titles,
attention. Oh
you
yeah, and
know?
it's so doing all of the job for you? No,
No.
not yet. At least, I wouldn't want to outsource that because of the trust, because I want
Yep.
my voice. I'm telling you, you want your voice. I don't
Mhm.
want, a machine making that decision for me. But as far as gathering the data, automating that process, maybe summarizing it. When I wrote this and I looked at it, literally, it was over 10,000 words for this two-part blog for all these vendor reports from all these hundreds of cyber vendors and technology vendors. And, I wrote it all up and I just out of curiosity, I threw it in to
Uh-huh.
ChatGPT and Gemini and said, what do you think the top trend is? And it came back with too much data. It couldn't deal with it. I mean, maybe I didn't have the high enough level
Woo.
version of it or something, or I didn't give it enough time or money. I don't know, but it kind of burped. The reality is, I do think that we're going to see innovative ways to help us do our daily jobs faster, more efficiently, better. I think that's going to be the main thrust of this in 2025. I think the other thing I would just mention briefly, these prediction reports and this, talking about the future, the old cliche yoga bear, it's hard to predict the future because I don't know what's going to happen basically. I mean, the reality is, I just want to mention this. We always think about these challenges in a linear way, assuming a whole bunch of things are going to stay the same. We all learned the hard way during COVID that, when COVID hit, it totally changed a lot of our paradigms about working from home,
Oh,
about
yeah.
what does it mean to be healthy or safe or wear masks or all these kinds of things. It totally changed. So, for example, I'm not predicting that China's going into Taiwan or some major cyber incident, Pearl Harbor is going to happen, but it might. And so the point is that what we don't know is what paradigm might shift that could change this focus. I mean, what's very clear is that there are a lot of geopolitical challenges we have in the cybersecurity world right now with, the war in Ukraine, what's going on in Gaza, what's going on in the Middle East, what's going on in Iran, what's going on with China and the attacks, the number of data breaches we saw in 2024 and the attacks of the telecoms. I don't think we fully even understand what all of that means, how much they've been listening to our phone calls or have our
For
data.
30
Um,
years, but yeah.
exactly. And I come from NSA, but I don't think we got that much data. It's the reality is that there's a lot of moving parts right now. So I think as people think about the future, my point of bringing that up with you, Matthew, is I think people need to think in terms of scenario-based planning. And
Yeah.
scenario-based planning is okay, you know, when you have your stock portfolio and you're thinking about your investments, if it's higher inflation market, it's going to be scenario one. If it's what we expect or best average case, it's going to be scenario two. And then if it's lower inflation and higher growth and the best case, maybe that's scenario three. We do that with our money. We do that with our bonds and our stocks. We do that with a lot of things in our lives, even with weather forecasts. If the storm goes here, we're going to get 12 inches. If it goes there, we're going to get 6 inches. If it goes here, we're going to have rain. I mean, we know how to do that in other areas of our lives. We need to be doing that as companies and thinking about this in cybersecurity when we do tabletop exercises, when we do ransomware. It's not just a one size fit all ransomware tabletop. Because if you've been doing the same ransomware tabletop for the last 5 years, you're doing it wrong. You know, and I've had people tell me that oh yeah, we're doing this again. We did the same thing back in 2018. If that's what you're doing, then you probably need to make some adjustments. And so you need to have scenario-based planning. I hope and pray China doesn't go into Taiwan. I'm not saying that's going to happen. What I am saying is, whatever your scenarios are in your organization, you need to have if this, then this. If that, then that. And think through some of those scenarios and be ready for those.
So that's a great lead in. And, my last question for you is how should cybersecurity leaders act right now, right, to get in front of these different types of challenges? I mean, what opportunities should they be leading into already as we're coming into the first quarter in 2025?
I think first of all, they've got to be involved in the AI initiatives in their companies, in their businesses, in their governments. I mean, it's amazing to me as I travel the country like you do, Matthew, and I get to visit around the world a little bit, and it amazes me. I work with a lot of governments, work with a lot of companies, and it's interesting just to even understand what CISOs, what chief information security officers do, what their day is framed like, what they're involved in, what they're not involved in, what committees they're not involved in. I would say out of the gate, you need to be, and not just from a cybersecurity perspective. Okay, cybersecurity and AI for our SOC, and that's nice. But I mean, as a business, understand what are the priorities of the business. So you can't really even think about the risk side and really dealing with that till you really have a good grasp of what are the business goals, what are the business priorities, what's really top of mind of the CEO, CFO, what's top of mind of the different business areas, whether that's in government or in the public or private sector. What are the top priorities and what are the deliverables? I learned that as a CISO many years ago, and I figured out very quickly. The little side story here, Matthew, I'll just throw out that people always ask me like, how do you get more money in cyber? How do you get more, and I kind of figured out, yeah, we were able to get some grants and we would get some money here and there. But one person said to me, this is probably 20 years ago now, Dan, you guys aren't even involved in the top projects. And so I was like, kind of almost thinking like, get on boats leaving the dock. So the idea of hey, there's this island out there. You're sitting here on the land. There's this island out there. The boats are all going out to the island. That's called Money Island, right? How do you get out to Money Island, or whatever you want to call it? Call it Priority Island, or Top Initiative Island, whatever you want to call it. But the reality of it is, you say, I don't have a boat. Matthew, I don't know how to get out there. Well, there's all these boats leaving the dock. Get on one of the boats leaving the dock. And so what does that translate to for cyber professionals, for leaders in technology is, make sure that you're involved in those top projects. I mean, in government, it might be, we're doing a tax rewrite system. We're doing a new CJIS system, criminal justice system. We're doing a new transportation system, or maybe you're doing a SAP, a big new, system, whatever the priorities are your security pros involved in those top projects? And certainly in 2025, they all have components of AI. So making sure that AI is part of the conversation, not just from a cybersecurity defense perspective, but that your teams are on those projects where artificial intelligence and generative Gen AI and other types of new innovative solutions are being discussed, and making sure cyber pros are on those teams. And that's also, by the way, where the budget comes from, because you say, okay, it's a $100 million project. I just need 2% for cybersecurity. There's $2 million for you. So, I mean, that works really well if it's done right. I give you a very simple view of it. It actually can be a lot more complex, I understand, in a lot of companies and governments. But making sure that you're engaged in the top priority initiatives wherever you're working this year. And that's going to make sure you stay relevant both in your personal career, your organizational, and that you're providing the right risk. So then you can provide risk management around those business processes and those new projects.
I think that's absolute. It's genius, and it's key, right? Cybersecurity has to align itself as part of the overall business goals. You're not just over in the corner doing a little security stuff.
Exactly.
Cybersecurity is now part of the business, and it needs business leadership as part of that. So you have to know and be intertwined for all the major goals of the organization, and that's how you win. That's how you adapt. Great insights, Dan. I really appreciate you here. Dan Lohrmann is the Field Chief Information Security Officer at Presidio. Thank you so much for sharing your cybersecurity insights today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank all of you for watching. Be sure to subscribe and catch all the Cybersecurity Vault episodes where we chat with industry leaders to dive into the most relevant and interesting cybersecurity challenges, perspectives, and best practices. See you next time.
So long.